Hello and welcome back, everyone. This is student meteorologist TJ Gunkel, and today I'm going to talk to you about Hurricane Matthew and the devastation it caused all the way from the Caribbean and up our east coast. So now we'll look at the projected path given by the National Hurricane Center for Hurricane Matthew. They were pretty confident at first that the storm was going to move to the west, and then there was a possibility that it was going to move up to the north in turn in the Caribbean Sea. So more confidence came in, and they were confident that it was going to move north, and it did. But they were a little skeptical on where exactly it was going to hit on Cuba and Haiti. So it eventually started moving closer to the time that it was almost on top of them, and they were confident that it was going to hit the edges of them and basically go between the two. So then it started to move up towards the Bahamas, and they were confident that it was going to go through the Bahamas, but they weren't exactly confident on where exactly along the coast it was going to hit of the United States. At first it was saying that it was going to keep getting stronger and it might make landfall in Florida, but it basically just rode out the coast of Florida and actually ended up making landfall in South Carolina. And then they were really uncertain on how this was going to move after it hit South Carolina, on if it was going to move out to sea or if it was going to get pulled down by the other hurricane, Nicole, out to its east and get pulled back down into the Bahamas region. But that wasn't the case, and it eventually started to move off the coast into the Atlantic again. So now as we look at the actual path that Hurricane Matthew has taken, we can see that it started well off in the Atlantic Ocean, right off the coast of Africa. And as it started moving towards the United States, it really started to strengthen in the Caribbean Sea, and it actually peaked up at a Category 5 hurricane on September 30th. And then it made its way up northwestward, and it hit Cuba and Haiti as a Category 4 hurricane, causing devastating winds and flooding in those areas. And it also had the same effects on the Bahamas as it started to move northwestern towards the Florida coast. Florida endured a lot of storm surge and heavy winds and then from the hurricane, but it did not make a landfall. And then it started to move up north towards South Carolina, where it actually did make landfall on October 8th. This caused a lot of flooding, not just due to storm surge, but also to the areas around being flooded by rivers from all the heavy rain endured from this storm. And then it eventually moved out on October 9th, moved out into the open sea, and became a post-tropical cyclone as it moved out into the open ocean. Hurricane Matthew brought a lot of precipitation along with the places that it affected. The Caribbean was the first to be hit, and as it hit its peak intensity, there was so much precipitation brought along with it. So we could look down there and we could see some higher purple and red shaded values down there, showing that is where a lot of the precipitation accumulated with high values of accumulation. As it moved closer to our shores, Florida wasn't as affected with the precipitation as much with accumulation wise. It was more affected by storm surge, but it still had some higher values of rain that fell. But as the storm moved up into Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, that is where most of the rain occurred. North Carolina looks like it had most of the rain that occurred, and that really affected some of the rivers and lakes around, and it flooded surrounding areas. Very devastating. And this also had many effects also in South Carolina and Georgia as well. So now we are looking at the peak wind gusts that affected our east coast. So the highest that I see on the map here is 107 miles per hour, and that is in Cape Canaveral. There's very strong winds, and that could really affect buildings that are not properly built. It could really tear them down real quick. But as we move up the coast, the winds start to die down a bit, but for example, Tybee Island, 96 miles an hour, that can still have a huge effect on many of the houses and buildings in that area. And also trees, once they're saturated, they can come down very easily. So that 96 mile an hour could really cause a lot of damage. So it may seem low compared to what the storm actually was, but it still causes a lot of damage. And as it moves up the coast, it seems to be weakening more, and that's when it went down to a Category 1. But still, 69 miles an hour in Charleston, that could still cause a lot of damage, and that wind was also bringing along storm surge along the coast, which is also very devastating. And as the storm started to move off the coast, Jeanette's Pier had a gust at 91 miles an hour, and that was on the Outer Banks. So that could still be very devastating. That just shows that the storm could still be very strong, even though it's only a Category 1. It could still whip out some strong gusts and cause a lot of destruction. FEMA also played a huge role in supporting the affected people from Hurricane Matthew. There was over 2,500 FEMA staff that was on the ground out there helping people and rescuing them from their cars and homes. There were over 700 rescues that were conducted. And many of the FEMA staff was also in charge of the shelters, providing these people that were rescued with meals and water and blankets, everything to keep them safe from the storm until everything cleared up and they can make it back to their house.
Thank you for tuning in this week. Tune in next week to see what the Gunk has in store for you. I'm student meteorologist TJ Gunkel. Thank you.